The Pirate Queen of Sunken Cove. Pirate Queen Mira lived where the sea hugs the sand and the sun naps on the rocks. She wore a floppy sun hat with a tiny shell stuck to the brim and a striped shirt that smelled of salt and story time. Every morning she climbed into Bubblewing, her little shell-shaped ship that clicked like a seashell when it sailed. Her parrot Pico squawked hello and twirled his pirate bandana. The waves sang soft rather than loud, and even the gulls hummed along. Mira whispered, "Today we will find a secret." And the sea winked back. Bubblewing bobbed like a sleepy bubble as Mira and Pico set off. Pico loved to point with one tiny claw and sing tiny pirate songs. Dip, dip, dive. The sea sniffed and blew a small, misty hello. Tuck the turtle surfaced slowly to wave with a flipper, and Waver the whale puffed a soft, tickly spray that smelled like blueberries and giggles. The crew waved back, and the sandy map flapped its paper wings. The map had little dotted footsteps that wiggled just a bit when Mira smiled. Adventure felt like a warm blanket on a chilly morning. They sailed toward Sunken Cove, a hidden bowl shaped like a lullaby. The cove was quiet and cozy, rings of smooth rocks like a tucked-in blanket. Glowy starfish twinkled on the shoreline, tiny lanterns of gold. The singing seashell lay half buried in the sand and chimed like small bell tides whenever the water kissed it. Mira listened close and hummed back. The sandy map whispered, "2 hops past the pebble that looks like a nose," and Pico hopped twice on the rail, making all aboard giggle. Sunlight made the water look like melted honey. Near a pebble shaped like a nose, they found a tiny sign, "Sunken Cove Welcome." The sign wobbled as if it had a shy hello. Crabby the crab scuttled out from behind seaweed, clicking his claws like small castanets. He looked fierce but blinked polite eyes. He had been guarding a secret for a long time, a secret that hummed under the sand. Mira sat down and offered a bit of her sandwich, and Crabby softened, his claws tapping a gentle rhythm. "Would you help us?" she asked, and he clicked twice like yes. The sandy map shivered and unrolled a path of tiny dots that glittered. It pointed down into a shallow pool where the tides whispered and the sand hummed. "The moonbox sleeps beneath the hush of the tide," the map sang in wrinkled letters. Pico fluffed his feathers and chirped in a beat, making the map dance. Mira put on her listening ears, the kind of ears that listen with more than 2 sides. Everyone bent close. The sea seemed to breathe slow, like a sleepy giant, and the path looked like a string of moonbeams. Mira and her friends hopped along the dotted path. 1 hop, 2 hop, splash. Tuck the turtle plodded and hummed a slow song to keep the steps steady. Waver the whale sang a deep note that made the water wobble like jelly, and the singing seashell chimed in. The path led under a little arch of rock where tiny fish waved their fins like flags. Shadows played hide-and-seek. Mira felt a flutter in her tummy, happy butterflies that travel in seashells. "Almost there," she whispered, and the map nodded, creasing a smile. At the pool's hush, they found the moonbox, half buried and humming like a small moon. It had brass stars and a tiny keyhole shaped like a heart, but the heart key was missing. A riddle was tucked under its lid. "To open my heart, you must share what you start. Sing with your friends, and kindness will part." The riddle sounded like someone tapping a soft drum. Pico squawked and repeated the last line in a squeaky chorus. Mira sat very still and thought of times she had shared her hat, her sandwich, and her giggles. They tried keys and counted coins, but nothing fit. Then Mira asked, "What does sharing sound like here?" Tuck leaned forward and offered his slow song. Waver blew warm spouts that made bubbles pop like tiny laughter. Crabby clicked his claws in a gentle rhythm, not loud but steady. Pico sang the silliest pirate song he knew, and the singing seashell chimed with each note. The crew held hands and fins and claws. The moonbox thrummed louder, and the sand around it shimmered like a smile cracking open. Suddenly, the cove sighed and a tiny breeze zipped through, carrying a sparkle. The moonbox sprang open with a soft pop, and out floated not gold coins, but a handful of bright, tiny lanterns shaped like smiley stars. Each lantern hummed a happy tune and smelled of warm toast and peppermint. Mira picked one up and felt it brighten her heart like a tiny sun. The riddle's answer was not treasure to hoard, but lights to share. Pico giggled and did a pirouette on the rail in delight. Everyone clapped and sang together. Just then, a wobbly wind came in from the open sea, a little storm that sniffed and seemed grumpy. It ruffled Pico's feathers and tousled Mira's hat. The lanterns trembled and blinked like shy fireflies. Mira stood up tall and said, "We will share our lights and calm the grumpy breeze." They passed a lantern to Tuck to carry slowly, another to Crabby who tucked it under his claw like a tiny sun, and one to Waver who placed it on his back so the big waves could be gentle. Together they hummed the kind song the sandy map taught them. The grumpy storm listened. The lantern's lights made patterns of warm polka dots on the waves. Pico sang squeaky, friendly notes that turned the wind into a gentle pillow. Crabby tapped little beats that matched the rain sprite's tiny steps. Mira swayed and hummed, and the sandy map nodded like a wise old friend. Piece by piece, the storm tucked itself back into a cloud and fell asleep, smiling. The cove sighed with relief and sent a ribbon of foam that kissed everyone's toes like a thank you. They all laughed, sticky and happy. With the cove calm, Mira had an idea. She suggested making a little parade to share the lanterns with all the hidden places around the rocks. Each friend held a light, and each light made a new friend feel brave. They lined up, Pico in front with a bell, Mira leading with a lantern, Tuck steady, Crabby clicking, Waver swimming beside with a glowing back. They marched and bobbed, singing the sharing song. Shells opened a bit to listen, little fish lit up like twinkling beads, and even the pebbles seemed to grin. At the end of their parade, they came to a tiny rock pool where a little shell baby had lost its lullaby. The shell baby shivered quietly. Mira knelt and cupped a lantern near the little shell so it could feel warm and listened to its tiny hiccup of song. The crew sang the song they had made together. The shell baby's hiccup turned into a chirrup, then a song, and then a joyful squeal that joined the cove chorus. Mira felt her chest swell with a full, gentle joy that tasted like sweet sea sugar. Night came on like a soft blanket. Stars popped awake and painted the sky with tiny holes of light. Bubblewing floated home slowly, carrying sleepy passengers and pockets of lantern glow that shimmered in the dark. The sandy map curled up in Mira's lap and yawned a little crackle. Pico tucked his head under Mira's chin and mumbled a last little pirate rhyme. The sea hummed a slow goodnight, and even the moonbox hummed from where they had left it, content and quiet. The cove glowed gentle as a bedtime story. In the morning, Mira invited every friend to the shore for a sharing tea cups of warm sea mint with tiny seashell cookies. They sat in a circle and passed the moonbox between them, remembering how they had listened and shared. Crabby clapped his claws, which sounded like small bells, and Waver hummed a happy low note that made the cups ripple gently. They decided to leave one lantern at the heart of Sunken Cove so new friends would always find a warm light. The moonbox felt full of tiny giggles and good promises. Before they sailed away, Mira planted a little flag made of fabric scraps sewn by Pico's tiny beak. The flag said, "Share lights, share smiles." It fluttered proud on a smooth rock, and the glowy starfish gathered around like tiny guardians. Creatures of Sunken Cove peeked to see the new message of the place. Come as you are, bring what you can. Mira hugged each friend and promised to return with new songs. Pico promised to practice pirates' polkas and maybe learn 2 new rhymes by then. Bubblewing paddled back into the calm sea, carrying the crew and little lantern light footprints on the water. The sandy map folded itself neatly away, and the singing seashell kept ticking tiny songs into the breeze. Mira looked back at Sunken Cove, where lights winked like a handful of tiny moons. She felt like a small captain with a very big heart. Pico squeaked a cheerful note that tasted like marshmallows, and everyone hummed along. They sailed home slowly, pockets full of shared light and pockets full of new songs. At bedtime, Mira tucked her lantern beside her bed and whispered the day's songs to the moon. The moonbox's little hum echoed softly from a shelf, reminding her that secrets shared are warm and safe. She dreamed of the cove smiling and of Pico learning silly polkas. In her dream, the sea pressed her hand softly and promised more slow afternoons filled with friends. When morning came, she yawned big and stretched, ready to sail again. There were always more small adventures waiting just after breakfast. Every child who heard the story of the Pirate Queen of Sunken Cove learned a little secret. Treasures can be soft and small, like lanterns, songs, and the kindness you hand over with both paws and claws. The world kept turning like a slow bubble, and Mira kept sailing, leaving tiny lights in the waves so other little sailors would never feel alone. The cove stayed warm and friendly, a place where the sea hummed lullabies and no one had to open a chest alone. And when you hear the sea tonight, maybe you will sing too.